Right, so where we left it that time, at the end of last time was maybe the mechanism for a poverty trap that Paxolin explained, and that was kind of a workhorse of development economics for many years, since the 1950s, might actually surprisingly not be at play. In that, number one, the effect of your calorie consumption on your productivity in the immediate next few days is probably not large enough. And perhaps as a consequence, or perhaps just because they have other things to do with their money, we don't see the poor also consuming as much as they can, and therefore we don't see a very high elasticity of food consumption with respect to wages. So if we don't have a very high elasticity of wages with respect to consumption, and we don't have a very high elasticity of consumption with respect to wages, then we are not going to get a very high elasticity of wages tomorrow with respect to wage yesterday. And therefore, the whole thing of I am poor because I am poor based on how much food I can consume is not really there. So on the one hand, you could say, fine, that's great. It means we can start focusing on other problems, and nutrition is not really an issue. And for some people, that has been the conclusion. For example, we showed on Tuesday, we showed some graphs coming from a paper by Angus Deaton and Jean Drèze about the fact that people are consuming less and less calories in India. So they're becoming richer, so they're moving along the Engel curve, and that would make them consume more, everything else equal. But the thing is, not everything else is equal. And at the same time, we have the Engel curve shifting to the right, so that it's a swimming upstream movement where you're trying to go up the Engel curve, but the Engel curve is shifting right, so you end up actually consuming less calories, fewer calories than you would otherwise consume. And so some people in India, for some people in India, this is a sign that there is much more poverty than the official statistics are saying, because if we define poverty as not having enough to eat, then we have more and more people who in fact don't have enough to eat. But what is strange is that if we look at the other things that people consume, and we measure poverty in this way, which is, if you look at the entire budget, are you someone who consumes less than $1 a day per capita, or 16 rupees a day if it's at India? And you don't find that. You find that there are fewer and fewer people who are below $1 a day. There is still a number. It's about 13%, but it's certainly going down. So it has to be that people exercise a choice not to eat as much. So Deaton and Drèze, who wrote this paper and documented the decline in calorie consumption in India, have one explanation. And their explanation is that people's need for calories has gone down because they are less ill, they have fewer children, they're doing less intense physical work. A lot of people have moved to the urban areas. So it's just they eat less because they need less of the strength, and therefore we have nothing to worry about in a sense. The fact that people are eating less is in a sense a sign of success of India's economic growth. But if it were the case, then we should find that the nutritional status of people would be adequate, defined in more objective terms, not the calories you're consuming, but what is your weight, what is your height, whether you are anemic or not, etc. We should find an improvement in that. Because to the extent that people are getting richer, they should want a little bit of improvement in their nutritional status. And what is striking and surprising, which is why there might be hidden traps, is that by all accounts, in India in particular, but in other places as well, people are still not very well nourished. And it is more a matter of, there is some undernourishment, which is people are not eating that many calories. And also maybe something that people have referred to as hidden hunger, and you can think about as malnutrition, which is even conditional on having enough calories. People are not getting enough of the other micronutrients that they need, for example, anemia. So here is like a number for For India, 33% of men and 36% of women have a BMI below 18.5. And meanwhile, iron deficiency anemia affects maybe something like 1 billion people worldwide. And iron deficiency anemia means that people are in fact less strong because the ability of their body or their blood to process the oxygen is limited. Because what we process the oxygen with are the blood cells in our body, the hemoglobin in our blood. And if we don't have enough of that, we're not very good at processing the oxygen. So you put people on a treadmill that are anemic, and they are not able to make it go as far. So we have here a puzzle that on the one hand, we don't see people appearing to be hungry for calories. In fact, when in China, we see this, we've seen this Jensen-Miller evidence which goes the opposite way, which is you make the cheaper source of calorie cheaper and people eat fewer calories, at least in one region. And yet, they seem to be not very well nourished.